So the brand is Nonin, that's the manufacturer, and it's called Sense. And I can tell you that this was purchased in June of 2014. So that gives you some sense of its age.
Okay. Okay, and so did you obtain the device through your medical insurance coverage? And if so, was it a challenge to get this approved for insurance coverage?
So the short answer is yes and yes. Yeah, we did get insurance to cover it. And the way that it was covered is we had a complex case manager, which helped navigate the system a lot, because they're like, I was actually a human person, couldn't understand our needs and the impact. And one of the ways that the medical rationale that it was authorized is because my loved one had relatively normal oxygen levels at night, but elevated CO2 levels. And so the CO2 monitoring, or the carbon dioxide monitoring, became extremely important. And that was the medical justification for the purchase. And we had an order from our physician, a letter of medical necessity, and that's how it got, and our complex case manager who helped understand the need for it.
Okay. Do you recall back then if there were monthly co-pays on it with a cap in payments before you owned it, or how did that work at the time?
We did not do that. They actually made a single purchase, and it was through my insurance company had a very difficult time actually finding a DME provider who would provide it at a rate in which they could agree to. And so that was a bit of a challenge, but the case manager took care of it, and she finally found a vendor that would pay for it, and they paid for it in full. And so we did not have any related copays or monthly copays, but I do understand that that's the way a lot of DME purchases happen.
Okay. Okay. And so you already kind of talked a little bit about this as to what made you decide that it was needed. Was it a clinician that sort of guided you in the path of this particular device? Or was it something that you kind of Googled or researched on your own to find out about?
It was kind of both. First of all, like Andrea, we've been trying to find a lot of resources and connecting through a lot of other really knowledgeable members of the neuromuscular disease community to understand some of the pitfalls of not paying attention to carbon dioxide. And so it was on our radar. I'm also a clinician. I'm an occupational therapist, so I have some understanding of medical issues. I'm not a physician or a respiratory therapist. And then also we see an expert clinician who specializes in breathing disorders in the neuromuscular disease population. We're very lucky to have a world expert as one of our physicians who understands these issues extremely well. And so that way was super helpful.
Okay. And if you would just kind of summarize a little bit about how this works.
Sure. The device is actually pretty simple. It's running now, so it has a little hum to it. There's a silent mode. There is an alarm, like if you set a parameter and want it to alarm at a certain level. And this, I believe it traps moisture, because for breath there is moisture associated with it. And you just attach, this is a line, like an oxygen line. This one has two sides that are have a screw tip on it.
Okay.
But it can also be used with a nasal cannula. In one end, the nasal prongs go in the nose, and then the this part, the other end, gets screwed in here.
Okay.
And so if I put it on and start to breathe in it, I'll just put it in my nose for demonstration. You'll see the numbers change. It takes a minute or two. It'll also give you your respiratory rate.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's registering.
Now, if you use ventilation, it might be difficult to use a nasal cannula. You could actually put a nasal cannula in your nose and do your best job to put your nose or face mask over it. You might get a leak, as you would expect. But I have a little device that eliminates the need for that, which is this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about those that use nasal pillows like myself. We wouldn't be able to use the nasal cannula.
Yes, and so this tube connects, and this fits right inside my son's vent line, and
Uh-huh.
then his mask, the tubing for his mask, will fit right over this.
Oh, okay.
We just use a little HY tape, which is, we learned about that in the ICU. It's great tape for tubing, and you can get it on Amazon, and it's really great. We use it for vent attachments. It's called HY tape. We call it pink tape because it's like peach or pink. And then the other end of it
Mm-hmm.
just goes into here. So easy. So he doesn't even have any idea that he's being monitored. If this is in the line, it's not bothering anything. You're just doing your normal thing, and the capnograph is measuring. The really
Re-show where you said the other end goes into something, because I
oh
don't think
yeah,
it was
sorry.
showing,
So
it was showing
that's
me on screen
one end,
for some
and this is the other.
reason. Okay.
I'm going to show you the packaging. It's called the model SALTCON, and this is actually for Nonin. Now, I'm not sure with your tubing if this would be the right device or not. For some
Yeah,
people.
there may be some variance in what we use to connect depending on what type of device we're using.
Right. So, but either it can be used as nasal cannula, like say you're sick or you're not on your ventilator and you want to just do a spot check, or part of his yearly assessment. We did that by telemedicine this year, and that when our doctor normally tests capnograph CO2 in our office visit as part of a yearly examination of breathing, and this year we just did it from home. He actually mailed us some tools to do that assessment at home, and we had the capnograph to say, like, you know, things are looking good.
Mm-hmm.
And then can use it for a sleep study. Interestingly, then this is this little piece gets attached to the device, and it will record on so I can do a sleep study, sort of. The only thing is, so I'll show you what that looks like. So after you attach this here on the capnograph, and then in the morning you turn it off, you unscrew this, and this gets connected to my computer with a USB.
Mm-hmm.
And using special software, I can generate a report.
Oh.
And what it shows is respiratory rate, and then average respiratory rate and capnograph data. So, and then the thing that's most important to me with this study is, a lot of people could look at different things with it, is it'll show you the maximum value. And for example, on this study that was done, the maximum value was 46, which is considered good and safe by our physician. So that's it also shows you average, which is also really to know, like, hey, that's in a safe range. And respiratory rate was also interesting, because as my son was growing, we changed his minimum breath rate and over time a little bit. And I could actually learn interesting things about what happened when I changed his ventilator settings. And I'll give you an example, is if I put, like, for example, his minimum breath rate at 10, he would breathe a lot fast, like 16. And so he was working all night breathing. But if I put it at 12, you know what? He would breathe at 12. And so just by using this report, I could find a respiratory rate that he could actually rest at. So anyway, that's a little bit side topic, but that was one of the benefits of it, was when we would make adjustments. First of all, if he wasn't feeling well, or, you know, having a dip in health, it's a great way to monitor. And the other thing is that if you're changing ventilator settings, the downside of this machine, and the reason that they gave, is that it doesn't monitor oxygen, which is extremely unfortunate, because my doctor, when I would give him these reports, he would say, well, what was the oxygen doing at that time? I'm like, I don't know, I was sleeping.
Yeah.
So that is a huge pitfall of this machine. So I don't recommend people bothering buying this machine. I think on the website I saw one very similar to this that measures both oxygen and CO2. I highly recommend that. So my insurance said, oh, they have a pulse oximeter. We're not going to bother getting a machine with both oxygen monitoring and CO2. But who the heck wants to stay up all night monitoring that and writing it down on a piece of paper because you can't print it out in a program? So as far as a pitfall of this particular machine and advice for someone moving forward is I would definitely advise you to get both an oxygen and CO2 monitor together. And
Good point.
And it's pretty quiet. And you just get up in the morning and turn it off. And
So is it something that you would say is used quite often, or just in these certain scenarios where the individual maybe is not feeling well, or maybe you're just periodically doing kind of an at-home sort of sleep study to check the CO2 levels?
I would say it's an intermittent assessment, and also with changes or with health challenges for us. But luckily, things have been very stable, and so it hasn't gotten as much use of late, and which is great. But it's great to know that it's there. And the other thing is if, especially during the last year with the pandemic, some people who got COVID may have needed oxygen support, and one of the most important factors, and I'm sure you can explain this in other detailed videos, which is that it's so important that if we were to administer oxygen, that we could monitor CO2 from home to prevent a hospitalization, because loved ones can't be in the hospital during the pandemic. And so that became even more critical, thankfully unused, but very critical during this period, where the idea of you might need oxygen if you were to contract a virus like COVID.
Right, and then you would be able to monitor that CO2 level constantly to ensure that that supplemental oxygen, even while on ventilation, is not disturbing that delicate balance between the two blood gases.
But we all know that anyone with a neuromuscular disease could catch a common cold at any time and need that kind of support as well. So it is a tremendous peace of mind to have. We all follow the other techniques we use for healthy breathing with neuromuscular disease.
So it really sounds like it's a great self-monitoring tool and something that can help you to be proactive in monitoring your respiratory care. Can you think of anything else about the device that you would want someone considering a device like this to think about or to know about this device or type of device?
So two things. One is that it's super helpful to be able to download the data, because for someone to stand over someone while they're sleeping and monitoring the numbers overnight is clearly not as good as having a summary report. And so if you have the capacity to have something that can generate a report, I highly recommend that. And the other thing is have both the ability to monitor oxygen and CO2 simultaneously, and then get the tools that you need to be able to use it both with the nasal cannula and in your vent line, or whatever breathing tools that you use, so that it can go in your line and it's seamless. I did at one time, and I could dig it out in the closet, I did take a screwdriver and drill a hole in the nasal piece of a hard mask that my son had. Threaded I cut the tip of the nasal cannula off, and I just had like the plain wire, and I threaded it through the hole, and I glued it with not super glue because that's toxic, but like craft glue to create, trying to get the capnograph monitor right at the nasal interface. And it basically, that's the only function that nasal interface can now have. So if you have an old one, you could try it, but of course you may end up with leaks. But you can get creative. I know you're a lot of creative people out there. So
yeah, well, this was great. Very helpful for us to see and learn a little bit about, and gives us something to know to go and talk to our care team about and find out if this device might be something that would be suitable for our own individual circumstances. So thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing this with us. And I'm sure we will probably get some additional questions that we can try to answer on the video post itself. But I think this gives us a really good starting point of understanding capnography devices, and ones in particular that can record while we're sleeping to monitor that important CO2 level.
Thank you for all your work, Breathe with MD. Really appreciate it. And I wish everyone the greatest respiratory health.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Okay, thank you.